All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Nuala Bishari. I am an opinion columnist and member of the editorial board at the San Francisco Chronicle. This is a League of Women Voters of San Francisco event. It's a nonpartisan political nonprofit that defends democracy. They provide education, encouraging people to vote in elections and participate in government. And they also engage in advocacy to influence public policy that benefits the community. A little bit of housekeeping first. This event will last 30 minutes until 12:45. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and volunteers with the League of Women Voters will collect them and give them to me. We may not have time to get all of the questions done. My apologies, but 30 minutes is a tight time frame. This event is being recorded and will be posted to the League YouTube in a few days with a link on the website, lwvsf.org. So thank you, Mano. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Please just
Thank you so much for having me, Nuala.
Of course. Take a few minutes to just introduce yourself. What is your background? What's your inspiration? And yeah, why you became a public defender.
Sure. Thank you for that question. I'm Mano Raju, the elected public defender for San Francisco, and it's really an honor to be here today with the League and with you, Nuala, and the Chronicle to talk about the work that we do. There are many streams that led to me becoming a public defender. One of them, I have to begin with my parents. They grew up in a farming village in South India, a lot of inequity, water shortages. My father was actually the first person in our family to finish high school, and was eventually able to pursue further education and come to this country. But it really took a village elder seeing him and believing him and seeing his potential that enabled him to have the confidence to go on, leave the village, finish high school, and come to this country. So when I think of what public defenders do, I think the most important thing that we do is to really see people. In addition to that, I was fortunate. So I think my mother worked very hard to make sure we returned to India, returned to our village, and got to know my extended community there. And that sort of formed in many ways my worldview on inequity. And I was helped by some high school teachers, public high school teachers, who helped me put my intuition into sort of a historical context. When I was in law school, I was a research assistant for a critical legal studies professor at Columbia Law School who encouraged me to go to law school. And in law, when I have that feeling of representing someone doing a trial, as soon as I started misdemeanors, fighting for someone next to me, that feeling that I had made me know that I'd found my calling. And it's been a wonderful journey ever since I began.
Thank you. Can you give us some background about what the purpose of a public defender's office is? How exactly is your work different, say, from the district attorney?
That's a great question, because there's a lot of times people will see me and say, I think you're the district attorney. And I have to clarify that and say, no, I'm the public defender. So thank you for that question. So the district attorney's office is the one that has the power to prosecute, to file charges against an individual. And our Constitution entitles people to have a defender standing by their side to defend against those charges. So that's where the public defender's office comes in. The prosecutor will come in, the judge will call a case, and someone will come to the desk, the podium, and the judge will say, do you have the funds to afford an attorney? When that person says no, the public defender steps in and we represent them. And it's our constitutional obligation to represent people, and we really take that obligation very seriously, to really zealously defend people. We do not think that people should have any less representation because they don't have funds. And we pride ourselves on trying to provide representation that would be better than if someone had the funds to pay for an attorney.
Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about why it is so important to have a public defender. Why is it important to push back a bit on the overwhelming power of the state? For example, are people mischarged or overcharged? What are some of the things that you encounter?
Sure. When the district attorney files charges, they base their charges on a police report. That police report is written by police officers at a certain point in time and becomes that fixed document. And the prosecution and there are oftentimes the police report is written in a way to justify certain charges. And that pretty much defines what leads the prosecutor to file a certain way. Now, there's so much more that has to be done to determine what actually happened in this situation. There's other questions that can be asked of the same witnesses that the police interviewed. There are other witnesses that may be out there that the police did not interview. There's a social history of the client that we can do. There's not just what happened, but the why. There may be expert testimony that would be necessary, experts to understand some of the dynamics of either the individual or the neighborhood. And so at that point, what was a narrow canvas of the police report becomes a much wider frame if you have a public defender who's doing their job. And we encourage our staff to leave no stone unturned in investigation, to leave no motion unfiled if it's protecting our client's right, and to really prepare to be excellent trial attorneys. Because we find as we get closer to trial, then all of a sudden what was, what a case looked a certain ways is totally different than that. And then either that leads to a more just resolution or it leads to a trial because we've done our job. And then we vigorously defend, and then the jury decides what has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt and what hasn't. But if there's not a public defender really pushing the envelope to do that, then we don't have fair outcomes because the prosecutor has the sole ability to charge a case, and they have tremendous power. I've seen situations where, depending on the neighborhood, let me give you a story. I was representing a young person, 18 years old, who was walking through the woods. He had a branch in his hand, and he sees his cousin on a scooter, his younger cousin who should have been in school. And he says, "What are you doing? Why aren't you in school?" And that younger cousin says, "Well, you're not my dad. You can't tell me what to do." And my client jokingly said, "Well, if I was your dad, I'd spank you with this branch here." Unfortunately, on the backswing, he ended up scraping the chin of his cousin. Cousin starts crying, goes home. My client goes to apologize. Now, in some neighborhoods, this is a situation where you call the parents and you resolve the issues. In some neighborhoods, maybe someone files a misdemeanor against the individual. In the case, it was a young African-American 18-year-old. This was when I was in Contra Costa in Richmond, California. They charged a felony strike. Okay. So if there's not a defender there to vigorously defend that individual, that could totally transform that person's life, their ability to go to college, their ability to secure employment, the amount of time the family has to take, separation from the family. It's just a whole series of things that can happen. And that's why it's really important we have vigorous defenders who are not going to just accept the charge as is, but do the deep dive and defend vigorously.
So this is, I can imagine at times, very heartbreaking work. This is difficult work. This is time-consuming work. Do you like it? Can you talk a little bit about why you serve, why you're in this role?
Yeah, I absolutely love this job. It's really a calling. But if it's not a calling, you shouldn't do this work because it is very, very challenging work. The stakes are high. When you get to felonies, you're representing people who may be looking at the rest of their life in prison or several decades. But even in a misdemeanor case, that is going to have a dramatic impact on an individual. So whatever case that any defender has for that individual, it's the most important thing going on in their life with the most potential devastating consequences. And when I think about the work we do, it should be fiercely client-centered representation, but it also has to be family-centered representation because we know the impact on that individual is going to impact their family and their ecosystem. But as a result, the feeling you get, and I've been fortunate to get a lot of good results in my trial work, the feeling that you get when the jury says not guilty, the feeling that you get when your motion protecting your client's constitutional right is granted, the feeling that you get when you're able to place that individual in a program that helps that person get to a better place in their life, there's no feeling like it. It's so rich and rewarding. So I actually love the work, but you have to be willing to, do a trial with that awareness that if you don't have the courage to do a trial with the awareness your client could receive a bad result and you don't have the energy to really work on the skills to generate fair results, then it's not. So it's certainly not for everyone, but if it is for you and you love working for some of the most vulnerable people and trying to make sure that they get fair representation, that they get justice, then I can't imagine a more beautiful job.
Wonderful. I know you have a very passionate and talented staff. Can you talk a little bit about how the Public Defender's Office is structured? Who are the clients who are sent to you? What is the impact? You mentioned a little bit about impact on family, friends. Can you talk us through the process a little bit?
Sure. As far as who we represent, anyone who's accused who doesn't have the resources. It because of a lot of historical circumstances in this country tends to be primarily BIPOC individuals that we represent. A lot of people with mental health issues also that we're representing. But whoever we're representing, it's important that we do it with the full force of our office and bringing all of our intellect and passion to the work. The Our misdemeanor and felony units are what people usually are aware of, that if someone's charged with a misdemeanor or felony, people start in our office in misdemeanors, representing cases where the most that someone can be sentenced to is usually a year in the county jail. And then they graduate after doing a certain number of trials to felonies where people are looking at potential state prison sentences. But in addition to that, so that's our defend function, to protect people's constitutional rights and to defend against charges in court. We also have paralegals, social workers, investigators, because that's an important piece of what we do. It's not all just attorneys, and everyone in our office is a defender. We also have an IT unit, clerical staff. In addition to that, we built out a policy unit. And it's really vital that public defenders be engaged with policy, because I'm the only elected public defender in the state. There's an elected prosecutor and there's an elected sheriff in every county. So from our vantage point, protecting people's constitutional rights, being in jails, being in courtrooms, meeting with family members, seeing the impact of the system on the most vulnerable members of our community, we're able to provide a different perspective in Sacramento that really incorporates that perspective. So we have been, I think there's a lot of awareness of the problems of mass incarceration and the inequities of the system, but we're able to see it from a really ground level. And for that reason, we've developed out work on the state policy level, a local policy level. Our Be the Jury program is something that's become a model for the country now, where people are getting paid $100 a day instead of $15 a day if they would have an economic hardship, which is increased racial and economic diversity on jury. I want to shout out J Dub here from the league, because she was involved in our coalition to end biased stops, which the police commission passed a policy in San Francisco. So police cannot pull over people for some traffic violations that actually aren't impeding public safety in any ways, which then leads to often traumatic interaction between police and members in the car. So we've very proud of the work that we're doing in that realm, both on a state and local policy level. We also have youth empowerment programs. We have our MAGIC programs, which are youth empowerment programs in the Bayview and in the Fillmore, that are engaged with young people so that they can, thrive and hopefully not become system impacted at all. We have our Clean Slate program that is expunging dozens and dozens of records every single week so that people can move on with their lives and not have a prior conviction be a barrier to housing or employment opportunities. We have our Freedom Project, that when the law is changed, if there's not a public defender pushing the judge after there's been legislative change in Sacramento, the law never reaches the intended beneficiaries. So our Freedom Project has brought about 100 people home. There's a 0 recidivism rate, and these people are all now reunited with their families and doing really well. So these are some of our empowerment programs that where we're really seeing promoting community health while we're dealing with some of the addressing some of the negative impacts of a system that oftentimes has been out of touch with reality.
Thank you. That's a great, thorough answer. We do have a question that came in. Is the SF Public Defender able to represent well everyone who wants their services? Can you talk a little bit about caseload, possible burnout on staff? I know you have a lot of people coming through your office.
That's a great question. Parity is a big issue in our field. The district attorney's office has 100 more employees than the public defender's office, even though we represent over 80% of the cases where the district attorney files charges. And we also represent people in immigration court and mental health. So additionally, the police department is about 14 times our budget, and our investigation unit is investing cases against them. So we could easily triple our staff, and everyone would have more than a full-time job in this office. So it is the case. When I was in the felony unit, I believe I had about somewhere between 90 and 100 felony cases, 10 of which carried a life sentence. This is not sustainable. We've worked hard to slowly grow our budget, but we're not close to the level that we should be at in terms of what caseloads are. Oftentimes we're in a situation where you have to tell a client, I could be ready on your case, but I have other cases that are going ahead of yours. So you literally have to wait 6 years, maybe a year in jail for me to get to your case. And that's the unfortunate reality of our system. The people we represent don't have a lot of political power in our system. And therefore, we end up not seeing public defenders funded in the way that police departments, sheriff departments, and district attorneys' offices are. As a result of that, it's really important to me. That's one of the reasons I'm doing these conversations, so people understand how vital the work we do is. Because let me make one thing clear: if public defenders do not perform at a high level, and even sometimes if we do, wrongful convictions will happen. Wrongful convictions happen every single day in courts across this country. People are pleading to things they did not do because they're detained. The district attorney has overcharged something. They're afraid of the consequences, and they'll often plead to something with it, which then has very detrimental consequences. Or you're on probation, you can't get a job, you can't support your family the way you want to. And that happens over and over again. So it's very important that we have a public defender's office that is well funded in order to counteract that. So the more attorneys we get, the more we can reduce the caseloads and people can put more time into each case. Having said that, we, as a result, have a very competitive hiring process. And the people we bring into this office have to be extraordinarily passionate. They have to be willing to work long hours. They have to be very skilled. They have to have a growth mindset. They have to be compassionate. They have to be able to connect with clients, and they have to be able to do the intellectually sophisticated legal work all at the same time. So we try to make up for what we don't have in sheer numbers with collaboration and passion and just skill.
Thank you. We have another question that just came in. Many of the people incarcerated are there because they can't afford bail. Has your office been able to work with the current DA to reduce these numbers?
The numbers have actually unfortunately gone way up under the current administration. We do file motions for people to be released, to not be held in jail, and to be released with sometimes with some restrictions, but so people can be out, because in addition to separation from the family, which is very just so challenging for so many members of our community, it also leads to people pleading to things oftentimes solely because they are incarcerated pre-trial. And it's common for district attorneys to make an offer of just plead to this, you can be released, but what you pled to often will stick with you for a very, very long time. So we're often in a position where we're trying to work with clients to convince them, if we can't get them released from jail, to stay in jail longer so that we can get to the trial, so that we can then reveal truth and demand justice in front of a jury, which is a very challenging thing to do, but that's one of the skills that we work on our staff to be able to accomplish. But it's not easy. So pre-trial detention, mischarging or overcharging, and then trial tax. Trial tax is a situation where judges will say, I know this offer is not 6 months, but be careful if you go to trial because you're looking at 6 years. That's a common phenomenon, and it's leads to a lot of distorted outcomes. And that's why, again, it's really important we have a vital public defender's office to push back against those, that what I would call a trinity of evils of our system. And just explain overcharging, that's what I talked about before when I said that same example. You could see it as a misdemeanor or you could see it as a felony. And it's really important that we push back against that.
Great, thank you. There's a couple of questions about increasing the budget. You mentioned that the DA has a much larger budget than the public defender's office. Are there any steps that could be taken to increase that budget? How much control do you have there? What would the process look like?
Well, one process, and I appreciate anyone on this call doing that, is reach out to the mayor, reach out to the board of supervisors, tell them about the importance of public defender funding. And again, I can't emphasize how much the public defender does for public safety. Oftentimes we think of just the police, the sheriff, and the district attorney as public safety agents. The public defender office is a super vital public safety agent for a couple reasons. One, when people get convicted of something worse or that they did not do, that leads to just tremendous consequences and destabilization for not just them, but their family. Now, this young person doesn't have a parent at home. They're destabilized. They may be in poverty. They may be struggling, and they may be in the system or be desperate or take that iPhone from someone because their parent can't buy it for them, and then the cycle continues. Secondly, and as public defenders, we think about the public defender triangle. So we want our people to be warriors in the courtroom, but we're also supposed to be counselors or facilitators to help our people get to a better place. So when someone truly feels seen, and when we have the right program for them, maybe it's a mentor, maybe it's some benefits they're not aware of. It could be temporary housing leading to permanent housing. It could be a paid internship. It could be a connection with the union to get to a more stable place. They are able to provide better for their family. They're better off, and then less likely to become system impacted and potentially harm someone else or commit a theft or an auto burg or something like that. So when we support people, that's actually a way of reducing recidivism. And we started actually an End the Cycle program in our office where we have boots on the ground, culturally competent social workers. So we're going and meeting people as soon as they hit the jail and trying to make those connections for those individuals in a culturally competent way so they can get to a better place. When that happens, we're all safer. And I think this idea of supporting people, believing in them, as opposed to just caging, slapping a conviction and releasing, has proven to be something that actually generates public safety. But it's very important we change hearts and minds and share those stories so people understand the impact of really seeing people and supporting them, which is something the public defender's office, our office, takes a lot of pride in doing.
I know that you're unique in that you're an elected public defender, and the voters put you in your office. I'm curious what accountability measures are in place. What is the public's role in holding the public defender accountable and your office? And how does public support affect your work, or oppose your work or influence
Sure.
and change it?
Yeah. Well, our work is a very public job. So I would encourage people, come down to your local courthouse. In this case, it's 850 Ryan. You can watch proceedings. So you can watch everything we're doing. And I encourage people come directly to me and tell me if they have issues with the level of representation. And I'll often tell to drill down on that myself. But in addition to that, that's one reason I'm having this conversation, because I want people to understand the work we're doing. I spoke at Glide a couple of weeks ago. I'm here. I was speaking to the Hayes Valley Merchant Association, spoke to USF medical students a couple of weeks ago. So I'm trying to get in as many spaces as possible so that people will understand the work that we're doing and not be sort of drowned out by the noise on social media. So that's another way that I encourage people to engage with our office. Also, the supervisor hearings when we're asking for funding. These are public hearings, and people should come and listen to us present about our budget and our needs. We have a update that we send out weekly to people. You can give your email to our Public Defender Media Relations team, and they can send you updates. And then we have a annual report that we put out. So we really try to be as transparent as we can about the work that we're doing, and then encourage people to observe us and come to forums like this and give us feedback.
Wonderful. Great. Moving on to some more kind of departmental priorities. I know that there are some competing priorities in the city right now, the mayor versus the board of supervisors and the people of San Francisco. I think this election is bringing up a lot of kind of policy disagreements. So I'm curious how you handle your, different departmental priorities, and yeah, the different struggles that are facing San Francisco right now.
Sure. Well, I think the most important thing what we can do is to really, again, fully see the people that we represent, because we're representing them fully, then we're trying to get them to a better place, and we're trying to make sure they don't have an unjust outcome. So if there's a policy that takes place, sometimes what that ends up being, we have more people being arrested. So it's really important we do that. At the same time, that's why we want to make sure we're in this space. And I make sure I'm communicating with our supervisors, communicating with the mayor, and telling them when I think there's something that isn't really as sound in terms of public policy as we think it's going to be. I mean, we had a clean slate event a couple of weeks ago, and just the number of people that our office was able to support who were able to get their records expunged and move into a better place in their life is really, really phenomenal. I think we have the best clean slate program in the country. So these are the kind of policies I think we need to be supporting so that people can get on their feet and then support people and bring them along with them. So I take my elected position very seriously, and I encourage people to reach out to me, and I'll reach out to people and let them know what I think of policies and make sure that the perspective of our clients is represented, because it's often one that's not our clients and their families. And I want to make sure, as an elected public defender, my first loyalty and obligation is to the people we represent and their families. And I want to make sure that that's heard in every space it should be.
Great. I think we have time for just one more quick question before we wrap up. Somebody asked about Prop 36 that would undo Prop 47, which I know is a really controversial one right now. Can you talk about what the impact might be on your office if Prop 36 passes?
Sure. And I'm saying this for the sake of education and so that people understand. When Prop 47 passed, that was really important because it diverted money that was spent on incarcerating people on really offenses that didn't actually harm people, or more public health issues or poverty issues, and they made these misdemeanors. Now all that money is going to go back into the carceral system and stay away from addressing root causes of issues, which is where we should be devoting our energies, into educational systems, into youth empowerment programs, into substance abuse disorder counseling. Areas like this that can really help people with their public health issues is where we should be devoting our resources. Secondly, there's a common misunderstanding that some things were legalized. That's actually false. What happened, for most misdemeanors, you can be sentenced to 6 months or a year of county jail. And it's very rare that a district attorney is even asking for more than that time. So certain, to the extent people are interested in some amount of jail time as a sort of hammer, that is still there, even without making some of these offenses felonies. So it's really a step in the wrong direction. And we really need to think about, it is a mistake to make more offenses have a more serious punishment, because there's plenty of jail time for those if people thought that's the appropriate angle to go to for these public health issues. And the broader issue is we're diverting resources away that actually address the underlying causes of some of these offenses in the first place.
Thank you. I know that's a really big question, so
Yeah.
I appreciate you keeping it brief. I think, we're just a couple minutes away from wrapping up, but I'd love for people to know how they can learn more about the Public Defender's Office, stay involved with your work. What are some of the ways that people can engage with you?
Sure. And I want to acknowledge Jesse and Carolyn. Jesse from my communications team and Carolyn, local policy director, are here on the call, and they're going to put some of this information in the chat. But please follow me, Mano Raju PD, on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Also follow us as the Public Defender's Office. We're on all of those platforms also, and often putting out messages to help people further understand. Our annual report is now in the chat. I see you can look at that, and it tells a lot of, in addition to an annual report, it tells a lot of our client stories, because stories are really the way they think we understand the impact of the system, the impact of our work. We really believe that our method of, on the public defender triangle, being warriors and being counselors or facilitators and being change makers at the same time, mixed in with some optimism, because we need that. We need to be hopeful. And we have seen the work of dedicated public defenders really having a positive impact on those we represent and the broader community. It's very rewarding work. And we know that the more funding we get with our very systemic way of organizing the office can really have tremendously positive impacts for our community and our city overall.
Thank you. Great. Thank you so much to Public Defender Mano Raju for being our guest today. Thank you to everybody who joined or is tuning in later. Please email volunteer@lwvsf.org to learn about the League's programs, volunteer opportunities, and to sign up for more events like this one. This recording will be shared in their newsletter and on the web. Thank you all so much for taking time over your lunch break to chat with us.
Thank you so much, Nuala. And thank you all for joining. Appreciate the conversation.
Wonderful. Have a good day.